Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with Joe Rotella. Joe is the Chief Value Officer at Delphia Consulting, and in today's episode, Joe and I are going to discuss leadership and what it takes to be a coach, as well as the 4 dimensions of coaching that every leader needs to be aware of, and how to gamify the job site to drive the output you are looking for from your various teams. Thanks for joining us today, Joe. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too.
So let's start out. How important is it for leaders of an organization to actually act like a coach in the company?
I think the key here is that when you're an effective leader, you can bring out 2 to 3 times the talent in others compared to your average leader. And I think the difference between those really effective leaders is leaders who are also a coach. I think leaders in general sometimes come at it thinking, well, I'm a leader because I have the title, or I have the experience, or I was given the authority. I think that kind of leadership, authoritarian, see how hard that is to say? That kind of leadership, it works just because it has to by structure, but it doesn't bring out the best in folks. Folks really want to learn, and they really want to be engaged, and they do want to be part of what I always call a tribe, some kind of community. And I think the difference between average leaders and exceptional leaders are the leaders who are coaches. The coaches, they're there every day interacting with folks. They're teaching folks. They're helping folks understand the why of what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing. I think that they're bringing out specific behaviors in folks and nurturing the positive behaviors to get even better results. So coaches can be leaders, and it's those leaders that I think really shine in the work environment.
No, I love that. So are there any tricks or things that you think that a good coach can do to help people that are maybe resistant to being coached to warm up to that?
I think the number one things anyone can do in a leadership or in a coaching role is to be authentic. And I think that's the problem with some leaders is they forget some really basic principles of being an effective leader. There's a whole bunch of rules around it, but I like the first 3. Be humble or lose the ego, be humble, and be curious. And by default, if you're going to be curious, you have to be good at asking questions and you have to be a good listener. I think the problem with some folks, especially leaders, is they have a ton of ego. They don't have any humility and they're not curious. So when somebody comes to them with a problem or a situation, as soon as they say, look, I'm having this problem, I don't know how to solve it. Oh, I know how to solve that. I've done that 58 times in my life. Just stand back. Let me tell you how it's done. And that's really very ineffective because you've just deflated the whole person. You've made it seem like you've never had that problem. They don't have anything valuable to add to the conversation. So the first thing I think any good leader, and especially a good coach, can do is shut up. Be quiet. Really be quiet and listen. If you record folks who are trying to do coaching sessions, you'll see they start out with the, hey, Mike, how's it going? How's your week been? Yeah, that's great. How are things at work? Good, good, good. No problems. Okay, we're done. Or if there is a problem, they immediately jump in to solve it. And that's not really empowering the person to learn how to solve the problem themselves. They're not engaged with solving the problem because you didn't pull them into the problem solving. You just shoved an answer right at them. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, it does. And like you mentioned, being authentic. So I like that approach. Are there other things aside from being authentic and interested and engaged that you think coaches can do to inspire their teams to be more interested?
I think it's it's getting folks to understand the why. Why they know what to do. They probably know how to do it. And you can give them some little guidance along the way. But folks are truly engaged when they understand why am I doing what am I doing? How does it help us achieve our vision or our mission? Or how does it help my personal growth? And it's when folks disconnect from that why that then it becomes a job. I'm just here to do my job. Whatever they tell me to do, I'm going to do. I think with coaching, we say there's four kind of dimensions to coaching, four things you can always do to to help someone in a coaching setting: provide direction, improve performance, open up possibilities, and be a resource for removing obstacles. So if you think about those different dimensions, a good coach, that first one, providing direction, I like to think of it as we're on a boat and we're trying to reach some distant island. That's the goal of this project. That's the goal of the company. That's our big goal. Providing directions, being able to say, whoa, 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 the boat's a little off to the right. No, to the left. No, no. Now you got it. Now we're headed in the right direction. Now you're doing the right thing. Improving performance is all about how you row the boat. And I don't think it's about telling the person, you should do it like this because this will be better. It's more asking, what could we do differently? What do you think we could do that would really help us row the boat better? And engage them in the problem solving. Then they're going to take some ownership. Once they take some ownership, they're going to really want to make a difference. It could be opening up the possibilities. And here, really, it's about asking questions because you're trying to teach that person how to solve problems on their own. Really, the best leaders are focused on not themselves, but serving others. I always think a great leader is somebody who can stand up in a meeting or somewhere and say, wow, we accomplished this huge thing. We, not me. And really, it was because of the team. The team really did that work. And I think I spot leaders who I think are more evolved by listening to how many times they credit others for their work, as opposed to take all the credit themselves. A leader's job is to promote those other folks.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard. I was just going to say I've heard it said that great leaders are not the ones that are necessarily giving all their good ideas, but they're actually inspiring and letting other people bring their best ideas to the group.
And I have to work on those three things: lose the ego, be humble, and be curious every single day. So I just turned 58 in June. So I would say I'm old. I've done this for a long time. I hired a millennial as part of our marketing team. And I remember kind of early on him starting with us a few years ago, he had said, I really want to promote our organization on Facebook. And my first instant gut reaction was, people don't buy our stuff on Facebook. Our customers aren't on Facebook. Tried that, didn't work, was totally ready to shut it down. And instead, had to catch myself, which isn't easy. And I think I might have even told him, I don't want to do this, but I may learn something. And what do we have? What could it hurt to try it for 30, 60, or 90 days? And you know what? He was right. And he's done great things and he's taught me great things. We never would have gotten there if I didn't lose the ego, be humble, and be curious.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that, yeah, I love that you mentioned. In fact, my daughter was mentioning this the other day at her company. There's a lot of people that have been there for 20, 30 years, and again, they're not listening to the millennials, and now they're having problems with their employees, and people are leaving because they don't feel like they're being heard or listened to. And I think that's fantastic that you keyed in on that and figured out how to tap into their brilliance instead of shut it down and kind of
But,
teach over the top.
it wasn't really the only thing I had to learn to do was to be quiet. And I think that's the hardest thing to do is to for someone who perceives themselves as a leader, especially if they have an authoritarian role, to understand just quiet. And you never know what you're going to learn from your folks. And when you ask those questions to learn, to be curious as part of a coaching session, you might have to ask the same question differently, three, four times. So what I mean is I have a great nephew as an example whose name is Kai. So early on, you'll say, Kai, what'd you do in school today? Nothing. You didn't do anything in school today. I bet you did something. Did you color? Mm-hmm. What did you color? You colored something. Well, I colored a house. A house? I want to hear all about it. Well, I colored a house and then we had to put an airplane. Then he'll go on and on and on. Well, people at work are the same way. You can ask a question. How did it go today? Good. Okay. And then you move on. Instead, if you dig a little deeper, it usually takes two, three, four questions. Not the same one. They're going to want to kill you. But coming at it from different ways to get them to open up. If you've done this long enough and built a culture where whatever they said, you didn't attack them for what they said. You didn't jump on it and say, that was wrong. I knew you did it like that. But instead focused on, well, what did you do? And what are we going to do going forward to improve performance or to look at this a bit differently? You build that kind of culture, it'll just keep growing and growing. You'll learn more. And a learning organization always does better than an organization that's static.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the term learning organization, that's something we've heard before on the podcast. And tell me more about that. When you picture what a learning organization is, what do you envision?
I don't mean, I'll say this, I don't mean it to sound offensive, but in our company, as an example, we're a software company.
Mhm.
Mistakes sometimes happen. And I always tell folks, we're not shipping kidneys here. That mistake isn't life threatening to someone. So instead of beating somebody up about it, instead say, okay, that didn't quite go as good as it could have. I think we could learn from this. What are we going to do next time so that this doesn't happen again? And if you build that culture where people don't feel threatened, they don't feel like you're going to just keep coming at them, then sometimes you'll even have folks who volunteer and say, uh, I don't know if anybody caught this, but I kind of really screwed this up back here. So I fixed it, but I think we ought to change our process so that doesn't happen again. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I keyed in on a word you said there. What can we learn? And I think that's something I found in my professional career that's become invaluable. Is no matter the situation, good or bad, what? Okay, we went through this and we won, or we went through this and we lost, or we didn't meet the criteria, or maybe we fell a little short of something, or maybe we missed a deadline. What can we learn? Where did we fall short? What can we improve next time?
And
And I think
when
that's
you say
important.
that, when you learn those things, Mike, the key is, do you institutionalize them? And an easy thing for me, my team and our company is filled with checklists because we'll build checklists and then say, oh, we need to go add that to this checklist over here because we don't want that to happen again. The nice thing is if people change, even if they move within the organization, you're not dependent on all that institutional knowledge being in someone's head. You've codified it, you've written it down somewhere so that it can be reapplied and continually improved. Whereas if you just go by what's in people's memory, forget it. If someone's on vacation, you're going to have the same mistake again.
Yeah, it'll just fade off into the ether, and you're just going to repeat the same mistake, a little while down the road, right?
Yep, yep.
So we talked a little earlier about, or you mentioned, um, these four approaches. One of the other things aside from that is gamification, and as a coach or a proponent of good coaches, obviously gamifying things is a great way to look at things differently. What are some examples or some things that you can share with our listeners on ways they can gamify?
Gamification is a tough one because part of me really, really likes it, but part of me worries that it builds a culture of just instant gratification. So I think you have to be careful how you balance it. But it could be gamifying, you know, we've done it over time. If you've been to, say, job sites where they've got a poster of how many safety incidents there were, and they show that it's going down. They made that a game. Or if you remember United Way campaigns, they used to put a big thermometer in the lobby of these buildings, like cut out of paper, and they would color in how much money they raised. And if you hit a certain amount, there was a big star. Well, if you hit that amount, they brought in free lunch for everyone. Or the first person who brings in so many leads gets, some kind of a praise. And it doesn't even have to be financial. It could be recognition. It could be time off. People right now are really big on having extra time off. So it doesn't have to necessarily be financial. Sometimes it could be private. If you really understand what motivates someone, you can recognize somebody for exceptional performance. And if they're the type that doesn't like a big, showy thing in front of the world, you do something private for them. So I just gave someone in my organization a gift that's all about square foot gardening, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I know they're really into that right now. I know they've built a garden at home. So the fact that I gave them something like that for accomplishing a goal really let them know he heard me and he remembered me and I'm important. So it could be public gamification where you've got, a poster, a banner, an image on your private website where somebody's getting stars or they're getting tick marks, and when they hit so many, they get a prize. It could be something private. It could be recognition, even on a quarterly company meeting where you say, okay, we set a goal last quarter of this many things, and I want to award our top 3 folks. Here they are, and here's what they've done. So it's basically giving a prize, giving a reward. People like games. They love games. They love playing games. So if you can give them something where they're accumulating points, they're accumulating stars, um, there are some personalities that are really going to resonate right towards that.
I really like that. So if we were to put this in the light of maybe a construction company or a service related company or somebody that has maybe a remote job site, do you have any ideas or things that you've seen used in that type of an environment?
I can give you a specific example
Okay.
for a company that's been doing construction work here at my house. And they have shown up on time. They have cleaned up their mess every day. They have been polite, exceptional work. And so at the end of this job, I talked to, I guess it would be the foreman or the project manager came out, and I told him, I shared all this with him. And he said, "Oh, that's great." And then that was it. I said, "You need a place where I can go and make a recommendation. You need to ask for them. You need to say, hey, on our website, you can use a tool called Boast. Boast, BOAST.io, Boast.io. You could build a form on your site. You can ask them to go to Yelp, Google reviews, but ask for those things. And why don't you incent your employees when they're working with customers to ask for those? And whoever gets the most for the company as a whole, you'll give some prize to." Well, I just talked to them a few months later because I need another job done. And I was thrilled because he said, that worked. We're getting reviews and people are saying good things. And when they're not saying good things, we're able to fix it. And some of them, they're happier because we fixed a problem. They'd still come back and use us even though we had a problem because we fixed it and made it right. Well, I love that. So they've gamified in a construction environment, getting positive reviews from people on their job sites. And I think that's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the company, they could give a gift card or a reward or something for the foreman or for the crew, maybe if they get a positive review on a site they did, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like he said, I thought it was really insightful when he said, when people have said things that were less than 5 stars, we've reached out to fix it. And after fixing it, they've said we would use you again because you fixed the problem. So people just want to know that you've listened and you care. And that's an easy, easy thing to gamify, getting feedback, getting reviews.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's using data or something that's a measurable point, right? You mentioned stars before. That's something visual, but when they're dealing with websites or marketing software, they can actually track that, right? Keep
And
score.
make it kind of simple to give feedback. Times I've gotten a post something survey and it's 50 questions. I'm like, oh hell no. But have you ever been to a restroom at an airport where they have the buttons, smile face, medium face, sad face, and you just touch it on your way out? If you make it easy for me to tell you what I think and optionally let me give you some details, then I'm all in. But send me a 15 question survey monkey, I'm out. I'm done. No matter how good you were.
You mentioned before you're a software company, so how do you utilize software to gamify things with your clients?
So one of our software applications is all about goal setting. And so each person has a dashboard, and when they achieve a goal, they get a little gold trophy up in the corner. And then there are bigger, higher level kind of reports where people can go see everybody's trophies and who has the most trophies. And, you want to be careful there. That has to go along with good coaching because you don't want to be the person who has no trophies and nobody's helping you get a trophy because that's going to demotivate you. You're going to want to leave. So there you want to have a coach who can understand what are we going to do to help this person get some trophies. And maybe you made the goals too big. A goal that is so big you'll never achieve it, is never going to happen. Goals can't really be aspirational. They also can't be so easy that you just forget it. Yeah, that's not really important. Goal setting is tough because you have to get the right balance between, a little bit challenging but not so challenging you give up.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you correctly, there's no participation trophies, right? That would be too easy because you
No,
showed
yep.
up, so you get one. But then on the other side, they can't be so lofty that only a select few are ever going to achieve them.
And there I would make the managers or the supervisors or whatever those titles are, one of their goals should be how many goals do their team members get? Because they're responsible for the success of that team. Not entirely, right? It's up to each individual, but that's their job as a coach. If you don't have a good coach on a sports team, they fire him. They get another one. And how do they evaluate the coach? Well, how well the team did. We tend not to do that.
Yeah, that's like the basketball coach that makes sure, I want 5 passes before anybody shoots the ball, right?
Yep, yep.
Keep
And that's
everybody involved.
the other key thing about coaching. A good coach doesn't wait till the end of the game to tell people what they did wrong and what they should be doing because it's too late. The game's already been decided. You want to be coaching throughout the game so that you can alter the outcome of the end result. Waiting till it's over, while helpful, is not really great. And when we wait till it's over, we tend to do feedback. And feedback, when you focus all of your conversation on an event in the past, it can trigger somebody's flight or fight mechanism. They get defensive. So now the new buzzword is feed forward. You can use an example from the past, but very quickly you want to change the wording, what you're saying, to be how are we going to learn from this to play differently in the next game? So don't just beat them up for what they did in the game that's over. Use it to change the outcome of the next game.
Yeah, that's kind of I use a phrase fail forward, right? It's like
Yeah.
when you utilize those challenges, shortcomings, mistakes to motivate you forward in the next opportunity, right?
And it can be a brave thing to do, but I can say with my own team, there's times where we do something big. We have a big marketing event, as an example. And when we get together afterwards to kind of talk about it, the team will start by doing a retrospective. They'll want to rehash everything that happened in the past event. And sometimes I'll stop them and be like, nope, nope, I don't want to hear any of this. That event's over. We're done. I want you to tell me everything we're going to do differently going forward. And I don't even want to know the why because I trust you guys. And everyone starts opening up and chiming in because it's not about what went wrong and who was responsible for it. It's what are we going to do differently? And it's amazing when that's over, if you listen carefully, how many folks took ownership, which is what you really want, of a piece they did that they could do better next time when they didn't have to say, I screwed up, here's what happened, here's what I'm going to do different. Instead, just say, what are you going to do different? They get energized, they're engaged.
Yeah, I like that. It's like not anticipating the speed bump long before you get to it, right? You slow down too early. You're worried about it.
Yep, yep.
You're impacting your driving when it has no impact on the performance, right?
And I think that comes back to being a leader that's all about serving the team because the team sees they're there just to help us all succeed. They're not there to yell if we didn't do well or take credit if we did well. They just want us all to do better. And people like working for a leader that they know is there for them, that has their back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're using these tools internally within your own company. So you're not just consulting and telling other people how to use them, but you're eating your own dog food, as they say, right?
We try, but I have to be honest, we screw up and it's you have to be reminded of it every single day. Every single day you have to I spoke at a huge conference last week and I got email today from someone saying, "I liked your content, but I think on this slide you mentioned three things. I think this fourth one is missing." And I have to be honest, my first reaction was, I'm the speaker here. You don't know what you're talking about. That's all ego. And instead, if I could catch myself and say, no, 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 read it, really read it and be curious, you know what? There was a good idea in there. There was a really good idea in there. And the me who doesn't work on this every single day would have just hit delete.
So what you're saying, you mentioned earlier, learning organization. Well, that includes the coach too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a good leader is always learning. Is always learning. And I think part of the problem we have in companies, in my experience, is I grew up in New York, and we had that TV commercial. The guy would say every day, I gotta go make the donuts. I gotta go make the donuts. And he made phenomenal donuts. So we promote him to be the head of all the donut makers. Well, number one, you might never have asked him. He may not want to be a leader. He might like making the donuts. And then if you just promote him with no training, you're counting on him learning or knowing how to be a good manager based on him having good managers in the past. And that doesn't always work. Some people who have kids should never have had kids because they weren't great at it. So when you promote someone, do you coach them? Do you train them? Or are you depending on their history to make them successful?
Yeah, and in most cases, what I see in organizations is, oh, well, this guy's really good at sales, or this gal's really good at sales, so they would make a fantastic VP of sales. And many times that's not the case. They're better at closing deals than coaching people.
Yeah,
Right.
and they may not have wanted to get that promotion.
Right.
You may have
Right.
set up your company so that the only way they could feel recognized was to go up a ladder like that when they don't even want that. And then you might have put them in the position and never really gave them tools for them to
Yeah.
succeed.
Right. Well, and some guys they just like to pour concrete. They really truly do. Or they love framing or carpentry.
Yeah.
They don't want a desk job. That would absolutely demotivate and take all the wind out of their sails if you said, now you got to give me these reports and you got to go, manage this software. You got to go through these other processes that have nothing to do with swinging a hammer or running a trowel. And so I think that's a great point too, is finding out before you put people in a position, whether you deem it as a promotion that they want or not. Just because it comes with a pay raise doesn't mean they're going to love it or excel at it.
In my case, Mike, I can tell you I'm a terrible manager. I'm an awful manager. I don't want to approve expenses and approve timesheets and track action items and all that jazz. That's all stuff I see as managers doing. I think I'm a good leader. I think I can inspire folks to get something done, but I don't want to do all that other stuff. So a wise company recognizes folks like that and says, okay, we'll put someone else as the manager part, but you can still advance either what motivates you, title, salary, who knows what, but you're going to stay in that hands-on space and not have to do that administrative space because we know that's not what you don't want to do it. And for me, if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to be good at it.
Yeah, I think that's true with most people, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there are times when somebody, you hear the phrase, oh, that you missed your calling. And a lot of times it's sarcastically, right? When
Yep,
someone's a
yep.
horrible singer and you say, oh, you missed your calling. You should be doing this professionally. But when I think back over my construction career, I can think of many employees again that were fantastic in the field. But yeah, if you stuck them in an office, they'd go bonkers for sure.
Oh, because they love what they do. There's different ways folks can be engaged. You can be engaged towards your organization. You can be engaged towards your profession. There's several, but folks like that are engaged towards their profession. They're craftsmen. Even if they're not putting their name on it physically, in their mind, their work, they're putting their name on it. My grandparents immigrated from Italy in the early 1900s. My dad worked in a quarry, didn't go to school past eighth grade, wasn't great at English and reading and writing and all that jazz. But nights and weekends, he was a carpenter. And I remember being young and getting in his old beat up truck, going to pretty fancy neighborhoods, and he would drive around with me and mom, and I hated it because we'd drive around and in Italian he'd say, "See that deck? I built that deck, and then I built that deck, and then I built that deck, and then I added on that room, and then I did this and that." And I just hated it. I hated riding around in that beat up truck. I was embarrassed by it. I mean, every part of it. Now, as an adult, I realize my dad was engaged towards his work. He was so proud of that work that even on weekends, he wanted to show it to me and my mom. And he wouldn't have wanted to do anything else in the world but build stuff. And boy, did he like what he built.
Wow. Well, and again, that's somebody who found their passion, right?
Yep,
Yeah, that's fantastic. So great leaders, again, find out what people's passions are and help carve a path to allow them to achieve those.
100% right.
I love that. So this has been a lot of fun. So tell me, you're working with all types of companies. I mean, how does somebody get in touch with you and learn more about your organization and how you might be able to help them?
Hey, I think you can Google me and find me everywhere. The easiest thing is to connect on LinkedIn. That's always a great place to find me. And I answer every single message, so that always works.
That's fantastic. Well, we'll encourage the listeners to certainly do that. So before we wrap up today, what is one thing, Joe, that you would hope the listeners would take away from our conversation today?
Well, I'm going to bundle them together. I have to bundle them together, Mike.
That's okay. All right.
In any situation, be at home, be at work, anywhere, lose the ego, be humble, and be curious because you might learn something you didn't know. You may not be right, or you may not be as right as somebody else's opinion.
Love that. Always learning, right?
Yep.
Fantastic. So, just a couple more quick questions. So, what's one thing that you are grateful for in your professional life?
Boy, that's a tough question. I think it's the people that I work with. My peers, the people who've reported to me, the people who have taught me, mentors. And I've even had employees from past jobs when I've left and moved on to a new company, they've left and come with me. And I think I'm really proud of that because they're either crazy or I must be doing something right that they want to follow you.
Yeah,
And I
maybe
like that,
both.
and
Maybe both.
I can depend on my folks. I know I can ask them to help do something and I never have to look back and see, was it done? Was it done well? Was it done as good as it could have been done? I have total trust in the folks that I work with. And I'm so happy about that. I'm so grateful about that.
Well, that's great. Well, you're building quite a legacy, and it sounds like you're accomplishing your goals and dreams and achieving that potential that you're setting out to in serving others. So I applaud your efforts
Well,
there.
thanks. What about you, Mike? What are you grateful for?
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to work with great people like you, to have opportunities to speak with and learn from so many diverse individuals that are so smart and so good at doing life. And I just man, like you're saying, I learn every conversation that I've ever had on these podcasts. I'm always
Well,
taking things
and
from
I learned like, wow, I need this cool background that he's got. Like you look so on top of your game. And I'm like in a Hawaiian shirt, just kind of chill.
Well, maybe I could wear a Hawaiian shirt with my cool background next time. So, all right. So, last question. All right. So, Joe, what is the one skill that you would say you've developed in life that's become really your superpower?
Well, because I developed it, does it have to mean I'm done developing it? Because I would say it's patience. Because when I look back at when I was in my 20s and 30s, boy, I didn't tolerate much.
Mhm.
And I was quick to fly off the handle, didn't let folks finish their sentence. I mean, I was awful. I was awful. And I think now, over time, I've learned that if you're patient and you listen, there might be other factors involved. There might be other circumstances involved. You can learn so much more if you just don't just come right at something. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that's fantastic. Good for you. Good for you.
I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
Well, that's the key right there, right? I mean, if you weren't, then you wouldn't be practicing what you preach, right?
This is true.
Love it. Well, thanks again for joining us today. Had a great time. I've learned from you, so I appreciate sharing and also having you share. And I hope our listeners will find value in this and look you up and see how else they can connect and find more value from what you have to offer.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Mike.
You bet. See ya.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us. and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.